Ashley Gattuso. We're here this week with Nicholas Scalice. He is the founder of Earnworthy and a newsletter called GrowthMarketer. Welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, Ashley? Thanks so much for having me on.
I'm excited because he looks so professional with his soundproof walls and his fancy microphone that we will know I've made it big one day when I
If only you knew.
advanced.
It's just from Amazon, and I sort of stapled it to the wall. It's like held together with staples and duct tape
I
behind
love it though. That's perfect branding. This is how businesses are made, right?
Yeah,
With
it
staples and
works.
duct tape. Yes,
It works. Yeah.
it works. So help me explain this, or even better yet, explain it for me. Earnworthy is an agency, and then GrowthMarketer is the newsletter that is a content strategy
hmm
for Earnworthy. Okay, so tell us about those.
Yeah, so I've been doing digital marketing for about 11 years. And about 5 years ago, I went out on my own, independent as a consultant, and launched Earnworthy, which is a marketing consultancy. And we specialize in growth marketing with a real focus on conversion optimization. We could get into that in more detail if we
Mm-hmm.
want, but we basically build landing pages for clients, and we help them get more visitors on their website and convert those visitors into leads and customers. And I realized, content marketing is a really good opportunity. So I launched a podcast back in 2015, and then that over the years has evolved into other types of content, most recently with a newsletter. And so to sort of keep things separate and give a clear distinction between the agency, consultancy side, and then
Mm-hmm.
all this content marketing that I've been doing with the podcasts and the newsletter, I created this Growth Marketer brand recently, and that's what houses basically the non-agency services, which include the podcast and the newsletter.
Okay, and so we are going to link in the description below to all of these things. Is the podcast by the same title, or does it have a different name?
So there's actually two podcasts.
Okay.
So there's an interview show called Growth Marketing Toolbox, and you
Okay.
can just search for Growth Marketing Toolbox, or even if you just search for growth marketing on any podcast platform, it's usually one of the top search results. And then I have another shorter format podcast called Learn Growth Marketing that's geared towards more of a beginner audience, and that one more closely aligns with the newsletter content.
Awesome. So I love how you're niching to your audiences.
Yeah.
I think this would be interesting to talk about because we do have several people in the newsletter world who do a little bit of everything.
hmm
But a lot of them have a podcast and a
Yeah.
newsletter. So can you kind of explain how the newsletter evolved? What need did you see it filling, and how you grew that on top of the podcast audience?
Absolutely. So yeah, podcasting was my first foray into anything beyond just like writing blog posts. Because I think most marketers understand the value of blog content, but these days you have to do something above and beyond that if you want to build a really strong audience. Because I mean, there's so many blogs out there. So podcasting, it was just a great way to sort of get out there with this growth marketing topic and teach people and interview people and just build a brand. And then I realized that, the next iteration, once you've sort of established yourself and you've built up an audience, and in my case, built up over 5 years, we have over 10,000 downloads a month on the show. We've interviewed some awesome folks like Seth Godin, and just have an episode going live soon with Pep over at CXL, which a lot of marketers know. I realized there's got to be a better way to build that audience off of the podcast platform. And so most marketers would say, well, you need to have some type of lead magnet. But to me, lead magnets can sometimes seem a little cheesy, a little salesy. So then I said, hey, everyone's sort of starting a newsletter in 2020. Why don't I give it a try? And so I figured, hey, why not continue what I'm doing with the podcast? But instead of doing these interview format shows where we cover one topic, I do sort of a recap of the week. What do marketers need to know? And the basic pitch of the newsletter is you can become the smartest marketer in the room by learning, what you need to know in growth marketing news, staying up on the latest tools, and getting some really good insights to prepare your week.
Okay, so your clients come to you for landing page
Mm-hmm.
optimization. They find you through several
Right.
platforms. Okay, excellent. So anything else you would advise, like if someone has a podcast and they're thinking about launching a newsletter, like what kind of decisions went into and we may just kind of touch on this as we talk through your newsletter, but
Sure. Yeah.
anything that comes to mind in that evolution of like, how did you determine content strategy based on what engagement was like on the podcast?
Yeah, so I've always been sort of a curator of content, and I know that that fits in well with this series. So even with my main podcast, which is Growth Marketing Toolbox, I interview people. I interview people who are marketing professionals and marketing gurus, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the newsletter, I tried to do the same thing, where I'm not necessarily creating a lot of original content. Rather, I'm sourcing third-party content, and I know that's a very popular format for newsletters. And for me, it's a little bit easier because I don't have to write these really long, in-depth case studies every week, which I subscribe to a lot of podcasts that or newsletters that do that. And
Mm-hmm.
it amazes me how these authors can turn out these very detailed case studies week after week. And it's just, oh my goodness. So both the podcast and the newsletter are aligned in the sense that they sort of curate content from the wider marketing network, or
Okay.
and so I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
really important distinction to make, is that when you are creating content, it takes a lot more time if you're going to be creating the original content versus curating or interviewing someone. So because these are more of a curation play and an interview play, I'm able to basically produce more content more quickly than if I were writing those case studies, all by myself.
Okay. And so last question before we open this screen share up and get diving into what your newsletter looks like, how you made those decisions, et cetera. As I was talking with someone the other day, and I know you just said like lead magnets,
Mhm.
and that seems to be the sentiment right now. Like, I don't know, there's still a lot of people making that play, like gated
Yeah,
ebook equal lead that
right.
converts at 0.01%. But uh, I was reading, or I have been reading, like a series of articles. It seems like people are transitioning from this idea of brand story,
Hmm.
which I feel like has really taken hold, and that is a wonderful idea. I'm a journalist by nature, like that's my inclination, is we need to be telling stories. But someone was making the case that we need to go beyond telling stories and have a point of view.
Hmm.
So my little like 2021 prediction that I haven't written out formally, but I've vocalized at least twice now, is that the future is going to be like a point of view magnet,
Mm.
which is what I would call a good curated newsletter,
Yeah,
right? Because it's taking what's out there, but putting your point of
your
view
own
on that.
spin on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even if that's just this is good and worth your time, this is not, like, that is having an opinion on
Hmm.
something that resonates with someone else. So just wanted to get your take on like whether you feel like that resonates. Is a newsletter an expression of a point of view, and can that suddenly become a lead magnet?
Yeah, I think so. I think when done right, I think the problem right now with newsletters is there's so many middle of the road newsletters, or newsletters that barely even try, or
Mm-hmm.
some that even to me they must be automated. And I'll subscribe for a few weeks and then I'll unsubscribe because it's like I don't need another collection of articles that are just completely unvetted in my inbox. So I think when done right, when you put that unique spin on it,
Mm-hmm.
it certainly stands out. And for Growth Marketer, I've tried to do that both with just keeping everything with this really nice theme of every week you're going to learn, what you need to know in news, what you need to know in terms of new tools to explore, and then what are the most important insights you can learn from, all to help you become a better growth marketer. So it's not like all marketing for everybody. It's specifically growth marketing, which
Mm-hmm.
is sort of a super niche segment, but a growing segment
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of folks really want to learn more about.
All right, well, I'm prepared to learn a little bit during your screen share.
So yeah, let me share. So this is the opt-in page, or one of them. I'm always testing different opt-in pages. This one's so far doing very well. I think it's converting in the 40% range. And then why don't we head over to one of the editions.
I
So I
like
have
that you
this
called it
archive.
episode
I
there.
know. See, I'm a podcaster. That's my background's podcasting. So the whole newsletter thing is relatively new compared to what I've done in the podcast space. But if for anyone who wants to check out all the previous editions. I put together a newsletter archive recently at growthmarketer.co/newsletter archive. So if we just check out this first one here, this is the most recent. Ignore the ugly share bar at the top. So this is using ActiveCampaign,
Mm-hmm.
which is the my email service provider. And so for some reason they still have Google Plus up here, which just drives me crazy as one of the share options. But people only see this if they click on this read in browser link. Otherwise,
Right.
they're going to see it in their email app of choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you start off with a little note from you.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
important.
This is something I've learned. I forget by who, but I remember somebody specifically who is knows a lot about newsletters said, you have to remind people of why you're in their inbox. Even if you think they know, people are getting so many emails these days. It's not a bad idea to just remind people what sort of the value prop is. And so I changed this from time to time slightly, and I've been sort of experimenting with it more and seeing if it affects unsubscribe rates and things like that. But I think just by having a short reminder at the top, doesn't always have to be exactly the same, but just something to remind people of what the value is that they originally opted in for. That's really going to help you.
Yeah. I think it's also like a little harder to unsubscribe from a human
Yeah.
who is helping you than it is from like something that, like you were talking about earlier, seems like it might be like a robot automating
Yeah.
newsletter sending to you.
Yeah.
Great.
And
And
that's a
you
good
send
point.
it with your name as
I was
the
just going to say that.
sender. Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's a really good point. I've tested sending it from GrowthMarketer, but I've always gotten a better open rate when it's sent directly from my full name.
Nice. Okay. And you use emojis sometimes in your subject
Yes.
lines.
Yeah, you can see
You're
these are
and
the
you're like a big A/B tester. You're testing up conversion rates on everything.
You
Are
know,
those working
believe it or
better?
not, yeah, believe it or not, I haven't done as much testing with the subject lines yet.
Okay.
That's on my list. So I'm sort of working through just, content, getting the system in place. And then my next big test is, I want to do a lot more testing. But so far, I've been using emojis in pretty much every single edition, and it's been doing very well. And I see it being much more common these days for newsletters to have emojis, but you don't want to overdo it. I would never put more than one emoji in the subject line.
Your subject line could just be like 5
All
emojis.
emojis. Yeah, that's what we're getting to.
That's what my like 8 and 10-year-old daughters would go for. You got to know your audience.
Yeah, that might work really well. You never know.
All right. So you've got categories here.
Yes.
First is news.
News, and then I'll have one story that I sort of have an image for. This is like the most important leading news story of the week. And so this is sent out every Thursday. So from Thursday to Thursday, I'm sort of curating things, or really Thursday to Wednesday, because I put it together last minute Wednesday night usually. And but I've been curating content all week. And so then whatever I think is like the most important news story that's related to growth marketing, that's going to go right here at the top with this image that I create.
Excellent.
Yeah, and then just a short summary. I try not to keep the summaries too long, although believe it or not, I did a survey recently with some of my readers, and the number one feedback was people want more content in the actual newsletter, and they don't want as many links, which was kind of interesting because they're signing up for this sort of knowing that it's a curation,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of people don't really want to click through to go to all these different sites to read an article on TechCrunch or Social Media Today. They want to get that summary in detail in the actual newsletter, even if that makes it a longer newsletter. So I thought that was a surprising bit of feedback from my audience.
Yeah, well, I think it speaks to like whether you want the click through or the to be the source of like the point of view information. And I was talking with like maybe Russ Henneberry at the Click about this.
I saw that
And
interview. Yeah.
yeah, so he said that their intention was to keep people in the newsletter, to be
Right.
like that if you got the newsletter, you still felt like you got the top level,
Right.
like the
Even if you didn't
nuggets
click on
of what
anything.
you
Yeah.
needed. And that like I find newsletters like that to be the ones that I do not delete. Like I either save it or I somehow like clip the link that
Yeah.
they sent me to and put it in a swipe file or something, because it's usually like if I've gone to the effort to click through to it, it's probably a guide that I want for a long time and not
Right.
just like
Yeah.
for the here and now.
Yeah, and I sort of do that even with these short snippets. So each section has four different stories, I guess you could call them, or four different resources. There's the main one, and then I have these three down here, which are additional stories. And so even these, like if you just read the one liner, you're going to get the main idea, but they don't have as much of a summary as the one at the top. So if you did want to learn, for instance, in this case, how to embed Apple Podcasts on the web, you would have to click through, but I still try it. I don't want it to be sort of like clickbait where you don't give enough information.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I try to give a good balance there.
Okay, cool. So you've got typically 4 news stories,
Mhm.
one that is like the alpha dog that
Yep.
wins as like if you want to be the smartest marketer in the room,
Yeah.
you should have seen this in the past week. And then
Yeah.
we go down to tools, which is one of my favorite sections of your newsletter.
Mine too. Mine too. And that's really where the inspiration originally came from, because my podcast, Growth Marketing Toolbox, is all about marketing tools. So, that was pretty much all I would talk about, but then everything else evolved from that. So with tools, it's the same format. So one main tool, and then three other ones that are not any less important, but I just wanted to give that hierarchy of like, hey, this is the featured tool, then here are some more, but these are four tools to explore, and none of this is sponsored. So these are tools that I've used or tested. These are tools that I personally recommend. I'm not getting paid, although some of them from time to time will be affiliate links, and there is that little affiliate disclaimer down at the bottom. But I would say probably about 70% of the time, it's just a straight up link where there's no affiliate relation or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of like since the time you've launched the newsletter, what are some of like your favorites or best performing tools that you've recommended?
So I'm a huge fan of Unbounce. That's
Mm-hmm.
the landing page builder that I use with a lot of our clients at Earnworthy. It's a very easy drag and drop landing page builder. There's another tool called ConvertFlow, which is a really cool, lesser known call to action builder. You can build pop-ups, you can build surveys. That's a really cool one. And then another one that I think did really well that I got a lot of feedback on is a tool called Video Ask, and it's by Typeform. Let me see if I can uh, make sure I'm spelling it right. It's a really cool, yeah, here it is, by Typeform. It's a really cool little widget that you can put up on your site, and people can actually watch a video of you, and then they can respond to it with another video or with text or with audio. And it's just a really cool like call to action that's not your standard little
I
pop up.
love that.
Yeah,
This
so
may
this
be
one's
the
really cool.
answer to a problem I've had. I recently ran a deal in a Facebook group, and that generated a lot of questions in the group as well
Mhm.
as in our support. And so I like immediately had to learn support because that team couldn't handle what I was marketing. Like
Oh yeah.
the influx was insane. And so I started rapidly answering questions about the product in like as quick a sentences and concise as possible. Now I wasn't like just typing and sending, but I was typing, looking at it, and then sending, like not the usual revision process that I would take on
Yeah.
a website page or something, because I was typing to this specific person. Little did I know that they were sharing it in a different Facebook group as like content about the deal I was offering, and that content was like selling the deal outside of the place I was selling the deal, which was fine. But it had me thinking, like, wouldn't it be interesting if we had a website where the conversations felt really casual
Yep.
to the extent that we were like, why do you need to use this product? Or what, how do we compare to X? And it brought more human element into it. So
Yeah.
this could be interesting for us.
That's a
Video
perfect
ask.
use case. Yeah. And that's sort of what the little widget looks like down here. And then you click on it and it starts playing, and then you can respond. So yeah, and I've tested this with some of our clients. We've tested it on our own lead magnet pages, and it performs really, really well when compared against like a static lead magnet that's just text.
I think people get scared of things like this because they're like, I've got to always be on and
Right.
available.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I like the premise of being accountable for what you're
Yeah.
selling.
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. See, you got to watch these things and listen for the nuggets of information.
A
I'm
lot of
secretly
tools.
just making new strategies as I interview people. All right, so we get down into insights, which
Yes.
is that like a smaller, is that a H2 or something? It feels
So these, yeah,
smaller
it's
than
still the
news.
same. Yeah,
Okay.
it's so the three sections, I try to keep them equally weighted.
Okay.
So there's news, tools, and insights, and I try to distinguish insights from news in the sense that news is what's really relevant right now, like in the past week or two.
Mm-hmm.
So it's usually like it's going to have a specific date that something got announced. That's very timely, or it's like a survey that just took place for 2020 or something, or predictions for 2021. And then insights are a little more timeless. And so, these could be things like this. This is a good um, use case right here. So I found these 150 best performing cold email templates, which would be perfect for someone to save into their swipe file.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, these are more of those timeless insights that growth marketers should just be aware of.
So do you have, I guess because they're on your WordPress site, insights are like you could technically go in to each one and pull up a library of these insights or each different category, but you'd have to do it that way? Or do you have a way for someone to go like, hey, I want all of the Growth Marketer newsletter insights that you've ever published?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess the best thing is just to go through the newsletter archive. You'd have to
Okay.
go page by page, but that is something that I think would be a good idea for the future. I see people putting together these sort of Airtable databases of growth marketing tactics. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it would be pretty cool to put something together like that, where it's not just these insights, but maybe just, a complete collection of everything, tools, maybe not the news stories, because those have a shorter
Shelf
shelf
life.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the insights are definitely much more timeless.
Cool. Okay. So we keep on scrolling and then podcast of the week.
This is a new section that I added, so I didn't have this at launch, and it's really the major uh, way that the newsletter has evolved. And originally, what I did was I asked the audience, would you prefer a podcast of the week that's related to growth marketing, or a book of the week? And believe it or not, most people wanted a podcast rather than a book, which makes sense. People are much more into podcasts these days
Well,
than
you can listen to that podcast before the next week, but you just get backlogged if you get a new book
right.
suggestion
It's just
every
going to get
week.
added to the shelf. Yeah.
I
So
mean, not that bookshelves are bad, right?
no, hey. And sometimes books have a lot higher quality insights because it takes people a much longer amount of time to put together a book than a podcast. So I think there's definitely a time and place for both.
Mm-hmm. I feel like podcasts, especially with the pandemic, with people like going on walks and
Oh yeah.
doing some things like that, they have even grown in popularity because of that accessibility or that like episodic nature.
Yeah.
Where you can feel like you're moving your way through something. I think anything that creates the feeling of momentum in a time of like almost
Static.
lockdown,
Yeah.
yeah, is rewarding. So, yay for podcast of the week. Now, is this always one of your podcasts, or is
No.
it outside? I feel like the ABM Conversations was mentioned one
Yep.
time. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll click through a different one so we could see some of the other recommended podcasts here. So like this one is from GrowthMarketer, which Russ Henneberry was formerly associated with.
Yep.
So I try to keep it balanced, but because I do produce basically 2 podcasts a week, I would say, at least once a month, I'm going to share either an episode of Growth Marketing Toolbox or Learn Growth Marketing.
That's interesting, because you then have to like earn your spot in your
Yeah,
own.
exactly.
Like there's like a little pressure there to make something worth mentioning in your own newsletter.
Right. Yeah. You
I
don't
like
want to be
that.
too self-promotional. Yeah.
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 I love that. Okay, so then this is one thing that I think our viewership is going to be very interested in. We haven't talked about it yet. We have some
Mhm.
things in the works on our end, but sharing and
Mhm.
referral links to get people some swag, or to just help get your newsletter spread out to the people who should care
Yeah.
about it, and get them subscribing too. When did you start this, and what is the process like?
So this, I think, probably within the last 3 months, I started the referral program, and I do recommend that you have one, but I wouldn't recommend having one at launch because I think it can be just overwhelming because it was a lot of work to set it up,
Uh-huh.
and you don't want to have too many things jumping out at the reader right when you're getting started with everything. You want to establish your brand, you want to get in a good rhythm of producing content, you want to have a really nice visual layout and a process. And then I felt like, okay, I had all that figured out. So now I wanted to um, just sort of jump on the bandwagon with the whole viral reward type thing, because I see a lot of really successful podcasts do this, such as The Hustle, Morning Brew, Stacked Marketer, which is a popular marketing podcast or
Mm-hmm.
newsletter. I keep saying
I
podcast.
know you said something else like podcasts or episodes, but we
Yeah.
knew what you meant. We know that The Hustle is a newsletter. We're there.
Yes. So
It's
yeah,
okay.
so this one is actually built with a tool called Viral Loops.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but this is what it looks like. And there's a lot of different tools out there, and I sort of vetted maybe 5 different tools before I decided on Viral Loops. And it just comes down to making sure that they have the integration that you need for your email service provider. So in this case, ActiveCampaign or
Mm-hmm.
Zapier, because a lot of the tools that I work with, they connect through Zapier and
Mm-hmm.
then they go into ActiveCampaign. And just making sure it's something that you're comfortable setting up, and it can work really well for your workflow.
Do you did you beta this before taking it to your entire audience, or did you just test it a bunch and know
Yeah,
that it was
not
going to
really.
work?
Just did some internal testing. But yeah, put in some fake email addresses,
Mm-hmm.
make sure it went through all the way, make sure it was tracking properly, and then sort of put it in a edition of the newsletter. And of course, over time, it's sort of picked up momentum. I
Mm-hmm.
think people, they see it several times week after week, and then they say, yeah, maybe I do want to see if I can earn one of those rewards. So if you do start with a referral program and it doesn't take off the first time you put it in, I'd say, don't worry too much, because just like with advertising, it takes many impressions for people to eventually take action in most cases. And so it's just, the same with these types of programs. As you put it in your newsletter week after week or month after month, I think it's going to sort of build up that momentum.
Okay, so did you start with like, did they do the products, or do you have to go create those elsewhere and then
Yeah.
upload them to their system? Is
Yeah,
that
so
how it
it's
works?
pretty much a blank slate. So
Okay.
it's up to you to create whatever rewards you want. And you can have just one level if you want, like
Mm-hmm.
just stickers, or maybe it's just a virtual thing. Like I see some newsletters do like a Facebook group where the only way to get access to the private members only Facebook group is to have 5 shares or 10 shares. So it's really up to you and your creativity as to what you want those rewards to be. But this is, I'd say, a pretty standard level
Share
where you have
magnet.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, something, you have something simple like stickers, you have t-shirts, and then in this case books. And I'll probably change that around a little bit, but people really like the stickers, so that one's definitely going to stay.
Excellent. Yeah, there's something about that these days. Like it feels
Yeah.
almost retro. to have
I know. Yeah.
brand stickers for some reason.
People love
Excellent.
stickers. Yeah. You can see them a
Okay.
little bit better right here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Look at marketing advice for tacos,
So,
but only on Tuesdays.
yeah. Taco Tuesday.
Excellent. All right. So you created those probably through something like Vistaprint or Canva, like ink. What's the one?
Yeah.
Custom ink or something?
It's a lot easier to create stickers than I thought. I never realized. So I came up with the idea for the sticker, like, I want this one to say coffee first, then marketing. And then I found someone on Fiverr who designs the
Ooh.
sticker in a high resolution file format. And then I use Sticker Mule to print the stickers, and they're not print on demand. I know you can do print on demand with certain companies like Vistaprint or
Mm-hmm.
Printful, but in this case, I just bought 500 stickers, and when they run out, they run out. So the stickers are what I send out myself. So I have like a whole box of stickers.
Oh, you're in
Um,
the mailing stuff business
yeah,
now.
so it is a little labor intensive, but I try to do it in batches every week, and yeah, people really love stickers.
Nice. So you're sending emails to then follow up with regular mail. But now you've got a regular, like now you've got an address, like you've got a postcard list.
Yeah. And
It,
it sort of all circles back, because I also send a letter. When you get stickers, you're also getting a letter that says, hey, don't forget to share this on social media. And I've had people post pictures of their stickers on their laptop or whatever. And then, people will comment on their post on Twitter and say, hey, I want to get some stickers. So there's definitely a viral element when the stickers are received.
I like that. So where, like, what's the most exotic place you've had to
Oh,
mail
man.
a sticker to?
We just sent some to Spain, uh,
Ooh.
Australia, New Zealand. And probably the most difficult thing is like dealing with some of these international addresses, because I mean, I'm from the US. I think addresses are a certain format, but then you get an
Uh,
address of like New Zealand or something, and it's like just totally not what you're used to, and you almost want to email them back and say, are you sure there's not something missing here in the address?
yeah, it
But
sounds like they just give you a road.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So you have to refer 10 to get that t-shirt. That should be
Yes.
everyone who's watching's goal. If not, you could go all the way to the 25 people and
Yeah.
get three. You get all three books.
All three. And they're the
Excellent.
actual print books, not just the ebooks. Yeah.
Excellent. So this is for those people who didn't want the podcast of,
Exactly.
of the week
Yeah.
or would like the book of the week, but might need to have like some motivation to get
Yeah.
them there. Excellent. Okay, so then I'm assuming that below that in the newsletter is some sort of like check out this week's podcast note and
And then, yeah, I sort of just end it with, sometimes a PS. So in this
mhm.
case, have you checked out my latest episode of either Learn Growth Marketing or Growth Marketing Toolbox? Or if I'm promoting something at the time, which I haven't really been doing lately, I'll put a promotional thing down here. And then this little box. This is another thing that I saw a lot of newsletter writers including at the end, where it's like, just one more thing or just three more things, and they're pretty standard, because you're always going to have these types of these same situations that come up where someone might have been forwarded the email, so then they need to be able to subscribe directly, or they want to share it on social media. So in this case, I have like a pre-written tweet
Mhm.
that you can basically just in 2 clicks share it to Twitter. And then if people want to connect, they can connect with me either on LinkedIn and Twitter. And that actually has been a really good thing that I've learned a lot from, by including some way for your audience to connect with you directly, either on LinkedIn, Twitter, or another social platform of your choice. You're building this audience in multiple places,
Mhm.
and it just creates a much stronger rapport with your audience than if they were only going to interact with you through your newsletter content.
Right, because now you've got a multi-channel
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, so what process are you using? I know you have a WordPress site,
Hmm.
and I know you're using, do we say Campaign Monitor or Active Campaign?
Active campaign.
Active Campaign.
Hmm.
You've got this optimized subscribe page Like that's the only thing on this page. Do you tease any of the content? Like, can they go see an issue?
Yeah, actually, and I'm glad you asked. So I've been testing this layout, and so I've been running a split test recently between the standard layout, which is sort of a
Mm-hmm.
longer format. So this is a longer version of my homepage, where it has some below the fold content, like who's behind the newsletter and just some a little bit more information. And then I've been testing that against a very, very short. I guess you can call this like a almost like a Substack style, or a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
newsletter services that are popping up. They have these very short formats for their opt-in pages that are very difficult to customize. And so I just wanted to test this style. And so this one does have like a read me first link. And what that does is it'll link out to the most recent um, a browser link for
Okay.
reading the newsletter. And believe it or not, though, this actually does not perform as well as the full version. So this one actually performed 18% worse. So another nugget there for anyone who's modifying their opt-in pages is that, at least in my case, having more content helped. And I don't have the link on the long format page for them to read the newsletter. So I don't know how important that is. I think having sort of that mystery of they don't know what the newsletter is going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
that might actually encourage more opt-ins. But again, of course, it could be different for your audience, so you should always test it. But in this case, yeah, just having it like this, where it doesn't have that direct link to check out before you subscribe, has been performing 18% better.
Interesting. See, I go back and forth on like the value of someone subscribing to something they haven't had a taste of,
Yeah.
because I wonder if they are going to be a highly engaged audience member once they get that taste. So it'd be interesting to test engagement of people who convert on this page versus engagement of people who did a read it first option. But you'd have to, like, the data would be most valuable if you knew they clicked
Right. You'd
read
have to
it
be able to
first.
track that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tie it back to the opt-in. Yeah. Which could be done. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see, because I'm a big fan of, like, it's not about list size, it's about
Right.
list
Quality.
engagement. Yeah, like so I was reading something, I think it's going to be in tomorrow's opt-in weekly, which by the time this airs could be 3 to 4 weeks from now. But if you hear this and you want to go back and find it, it was an article about ways to increase your open rate.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things was make it hard to subscribe.
Mm.
And their argument was that the harder it is to subscribe, the more likely they really want it.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, that could be true. I kind of like, I feel like different people have different motives for different
Yeah.
things they do. And so I'm always like, take stuff like that with a grain of salt.
I
Like,
could see that being an interesting approach. I guess my take is more, since I do use paid advertising to get opt-ins from time to time. My
mm-hmm.
take is if I'm already paying for someone to click on an
Mm,
ad, I've already spent that money on the click, then I want them to opt in as quickly and easily as possible. And then through that process of them being on the list, just doing good list hygiene and cleaning your list and making sure that everyone stays engaged. That's where I'm sort of going to weed out the people that might not be the ideal subscribers, or they're going to remove themselves with the unsubscribe link. So I kind of take the opposite approach of just make it as easy as possible for someone to opt in, and then sort of deal with the engagement issue after they're on your list.
mm-hmm. I thought it was this weird analogy when you said that, which was like kids who are picky eaters and you just kind of want them to take a taste,
Right.
right? Like just
Yeah.
commit to the bite instead
Yeah.
of like, let's think about it and talk about it and have this whole drama about whether we should be
Yeah.
feeding you right now. Okay. So you use WordPress, is this Unbounce that you're using for your opt-in page?
Yeah, so some of
Okay.
them are. So yeah, the ones, so this one, the weekly page is, and so
Uh-huh.
that's just one of the variants of it, but technically it's just growthmarketer.co/weekly. You could see now it's defaulting to the B variant.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for the homepage though, it's a WordPress. So with the homepage, it's a little bit different because I do have a link to the full site. So if you scroll down, you can click through, and then like there is actually a lot of content on the site. There's blog posts, there's links to the podcast, there's some lead magnets, there's a link to my Facebook group. So there is a lot more content. And this strategy of having the homepage really, really minimal with just this one link down at the bottom, I think I got that from Noah Kagan, okdork.com. Very, very good blog about marketing and business. And he has a very similar approach where it's almost like a squeeze page at the top of his homepage where you have this one call to action and you can't get distracted. But yet, for the people that just want to find the blog, for instance, they can still get there just by scrolling down, and then they can go to the full site.
Gotcha. So let's talk about business models. If this feeds into Earnworthy, I'm assuming it also makes income on its own in some ways with your affiliate or some things like that. And then what percentage of people who engage with this content like eventually make that trip down to like the bottom and go, oh, what's Earnworthy? Oh, I trust these people. I should see what more I can get from them or pay them to do. So how does that work?
Yeah, so believe it or not, right now that link is not as strong as it should be, because this is all sort of a new approach. Like originally, when I launched my podcast back in 2015, it was all around the Earnworthy brand, and it's only really the last year and a half that I've started separating the Earnworthy side of my agency and consultancy work with the content side of the podcasts and the newsletters and the courses and all that. So yeah, at this point, I mean, we've definitely gotten a fair number of new clients at Earnworthy who have said, I've listened to your podcast or I subscribe to your newsletter and I love it. But in some cases, it's hard to track because I'm not asking every single person that we work with like, hey, did you ever hear one of my podcasts or
right.
check out my newsletter? And I'm sure, some of them have, and I just don't know it. But down the road, I want to create more of that connection. But really, I mean, the other truth of it is, what we do at Earnworthy is so super specific with landing pages. If it was too easy for people to just sort of go over to Earnworthy and say, hey, we want to work with you, I think we'd get a lot of inquiries that we either wouldn't be able to handle or we wouldn't be a good fit for. So I do like to keep some friction there because of what we do at Earnworthy. It's just so specific. It's not like we're just a growth agency that can help anybody. It has to be, you need help with a landing page, you're open to using a platform like Unbounce, you're in a certain price range. And so, so it's not, I wouldn't say it's like open the floodgates and let everybody just check out what we're doing with Earnworthy.
Okay. And so then that brings another like business thing to mind, which is, do you plan to ever run paid sponsorships in the newsletter?
Yes. And I've been getting inquiries about that already and with the podcast. And I feel that's another advantage of having both the podcast and a newsletter is that you can create these bundles of sponsorship opportunities where, because if you ask the average sponsor, hey, do you want to advertise in a newsletter or do you want to advertise in a newsletter and in a podcast and sort of get this multi-channel approach? So that's also something that just because this is so new, I mean, this launched, I think, less than a year ago. I don't want to sort of burn the bridge yet and become too sponsor driven just yet.
Right.
So I'm okay, working at a loss right now with the newsletter side of things because I feel that's going to eventually be made up when I have some plans for some courses and a paid community that's on the horizon. So I think there's a lot of ways to monetize a newsletter these days and a podcast. And I would say, try to be patient with it. Don't jump right into sponsorships if you can avoid it, because I've subscribed to a lot of newsletters and it feels like 80% of the content is sponsored content. And, that's just not going to create a good relationship with the reader.
Right. So when you do make that step, even if you do it right at first, I think that you've got to have like a great original content in Curated. There's like a green leaf for your organic content
Right,
and
right.
like a briefcase
For the
for
sponsor.
your
Yeah.
for your sponsor, like just in the UI or whatever. And so like there are like these recommendations, like you should have roughly 10 pieces of organic and one or two, like we're
Not all
trying.
sponsored. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because that becomes something that like subverts your mission,
Yeah.
right? Um, Interesting. Okay, so I have taken up a good bit of this hour with you. I am now on my way to becoming one of the smartest marketers in the room. I don't know. I'm in my house alone right now, so I guess I can say that. But when my children come home, I might not have that. Anything else you would add? We can stop the screen share and you can just kind of
Yeah.
speak, from your heart to the newsletter creators out there. If someone is thinking about launching a newsletter or kind of I think we talked to a lot of people who are in this like, should I, shouldn't I kind of continue phase. And I think that the more people like you who are like, I'm being patient with this, I know I'm building something bigger. If you want to add to that, like what you would say to them if they're in their first year or like a growth phase, any inspiration?
Yeah, I would say be patient. Don't bite off more than you can chew. I mean, we covered a lot with the podcast and the newsletter and the sponsors and referrals, and there's so many different things you can do. But I would say just focus in on one really good, simple thing, which is be consistent with content that is valuable, that solves a specific problem. Don't try to just copy what someone else is doing. Find a unique way to put your spin on it. And I would say consistency is really, really important. So far, I've only missed 1 week. You have to be consistent with your newsletter, even when you don't want to send it out. Give yourself enough wiggle room so you're not down to the last minute when, it's supposed to go out every Thursday. You don't want to be working on it Thursday morning. Consistency is key. And if you build that audience right and you build the rapport with that audience, the opportunities to monetize will reveal themselves. You're going to get sponsorship opportunities. You're going to get these ideas for, hey, I can create a paid community or I can create courses. And a lot of that content will come from your list. They'll tell you what they want. So I wouldn't go into it saying, oh, we have to have this much revenue per edition and we need to have this many sponsors. Just focus on really serving that audience with valuable content and not selling from day one. And if you do that consistently, I think it's going to be rewarding.
I love that idea of your audience is going to tell you, and you test landing pages.
Yeah.
So would you say like a newsletter, when done well, can be like a living, breathing testing zone for new ideas or things that you're contemplating launching?
Yeah. And on that point, your welcome email. So when someone opts in, they should get an email right away. We usually call that the welcome email. One of the best things you can do, here's a really good nugget for anyone out there who's not doing this, is make sure you're asking a question in that welcome email. So the question that I ask is, what's the number one thing related to growth marketing that you want to learn this year? And believe it or not, I'll get about a 20% reply rate. And people will say, hey, I want to learn about analytics, or I want to learn about some obscure thing that I'm not even really thinking of when it comes to growth marketing.
You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's great because this is now, I know this is what I need to curate in future episodes, especially or editions, as I hear it repeatedly when people keep saying, hey, we want to hear more about paid advertising and less about SEO because everyone's talking about SEO. Then I know, okay, I need to curate more content related to that versus that. So asking a question in your welcome email is one of the best ways to get insights as to what your specific audience wants to hear about.
Excellent. Yes. Yes. I've seen some newsletters that do a great job with polling within the newsletter, which I think is something interesting to try and gives you like a great sense of where your audience is or who's using what and what they want to know more about. But that welcome, that is like, that's the introduction. That's the forging of the relationship. Simple. It's the first thing you've sent to them.
And it helps your open rates and it helps your email deliverability. If you can get someone to reply to your welcome email, that's just going to be great for the future longevity of that relationship with that subscriber.
Great point. All right. Well, thank you so very much for joining us today. I'm going to have links to all of the various things that you put out into the world of content marketing, podcast, website. One of your many opt-in pages will be something that appears for people below. They can tell you how they like it. And we encourage people to ask questions. This is on YouTube and will be on our website at some point in the future. So I will ping you if someone asks a question directly for you there, and maybe we'll have a little conversation.
That would be great.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley.